All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today we are taking on a topic that I think a lot of us are always kind of thinking about, happiness.
Yeah.
But, and this is key for me at least, we're not just talking about the fluffy, good vibe stuff. We're going depth on what science actually has to say.
Right, the research.
Exactly. So our main source material today is this article from positivepsychology.com. It's called The Science of Happiness in Positive Psychology 101. It was published back in 2017, but they've got a totally updated version from this year, 2024, so it's cutting edge stuff. I gotta say, prepping for this, I felt like I was getting a crash course in happiness myself.
Oh, it's a fantastic resource. Really dives into the nitty-gritty.
Right. So, listeners, here's what I want you to do as we get started. Think back to a time when you were genuinely, truly happy. Like, what made that moment so special?
Good question.
Hold on to that memory, okay?
Yep.
Because as we go through this research, it might start to make even more sense. Like, what was actually going on in your brain?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, scientifically speaking, happiness isn't just one thing. This article breaks it down into two main ideas. There's hedonia,
Hedonia.
which is all about pleasure, good feelings,
Yeah.
enjoying the moment. But then there's also eudaimonia.
Okay, eudaimonia. So what's the difference?
Eudaimonia is deeper. It's about purpose, finding meaning in life, living by your values.
So it's not just about feeling good, but doing good or being good.
Kind of, yeah. And happiness research, it turns out, it tries to look at both of these sides.
Fascinating. Now, the article goes on to list a bunch of things that affect our happiness, right? Like personality, emotions, health, relationships, even our goals.
Right, and it emphasizes that it's not any one thing. It's all these threads woven together.
Like a big happiness tapestry or something.
Exactly.
So, thinking back to psychology, how it used to be, it was all focused on what's wrong with people. But positive psychology comes along and it's like, hey, wait a minute. What about what helps us thrive?
Huge shift, yeah. That's where this whole science of happiness thing comes in. It's not just self-help fluff anymore. We've got decades of studies to back it up.
And some of these findings are seriously mind-blowing. For example, you know that saying, money can't buy happiness. Well, it turns out there's actually some truth to that.
Right, at least to a point. There was a study, I think it was Kahneman and Deaton. They found that in the U.S., once you're making over $75,000 a year, getting more money doesn't really make you that much happier.
Whoa, $75,000. So past that point, it's like diminishing returns on the happiness scale.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, if it's not just about the money, what else is going on?
Right. So is happiness just something we're born with then? Like, are we stuck with whatever our genes give us?
Actually, no. This is one of the most exciting things to me. Like, we're not just puppets of our DNA. There was this research by Lubomirsky showed that something like 40%, maybe even more, of our happiness comes from our choices, the things we do every day.
Wait, so we have a lot more control than we think.
Absolutely. While, sure, genetics and life circumstances matter, a huge chunk of it is what we do with our thoughts, our actions, the way we live.
That's pretty empowering to know. But here's where things get a little weird. The article also says that if you try too hard to be happy, it can backfire.
Right, almost like you're chasing after it and it runs away.
Yeah. So what's the deal with that?
Well, this research by Materius, it showed that when people get too fixated on happiness, they can actually become more self-centered, and that ends up making them less happy.
So it's like you got to find that sweet spot, right? Like pursuing happiness but not getting obsessed with it.
Exactly. It's about cultivating it through what you do, how you connect with others, not just chasing some abstract feeling.
This is already making me rethink some things. And we've only scratched the surface.
Oh, we've got so much more to uncover. The article also talked about this idea of a hedonic treadmill.
Hedonic treadmill. Sounds ominous. Like, are we running in place or something?
Kind of. The idea is that when good things happen, you get a raise, buy a new car, you get a happiness boost, but it's temporary. We adapt, and then we're back to wanting the next thing.
So it's like we're constantly chasing that next high, but it never really lasts.
Right. It can keep us from appreciating what we already have. So it's important to focus on building those internal sources of happiness, not just external ones.
Yeah, this is blowing my mind already. So it's not just about chasing pleasure, it's about finding deeper meaning and contentment.
Exactly. Savoring the simple joys, building strong relationships, living in line with your values, that's where lasting happiness lies.
Okay, so it's not just about what we have, but also how we live. This is seriously making me think about my priorities. But before we get too deep into that, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more mind-blowing insights from the science of happiness. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before the break, we were really starting to unpack this idea of happiness, not just as a feeling, but something we can kind of cultivate.
Right, like yeah, exactly. And we were talking about this cool framework from the article called Heal, Have, Enrich, Absorb, and Link.
Right, a roadmap to greater well-being.
Exactly. And I'm ready to dive in and get practical. So we know have is about creating those positive experiences in our lives, but like, how do we actually do that?
Well, sometimes it's about getting intentional. Right. Think about what truly brings you joy.
Yeah. Yeah, like what actually lights you up?
Exactly. Spending time with loved ones, maybe it's listening to music, being out in nature, or diving into a creative hobby.
Okay, so being mindful of those moments, but what about those days when it feels like everything is going wrong? How can we have positive experiences when we're stressed out or just like, blah?
That's where that enrich step comes in, right? Amplifying those good moments, even little ones. Think about practicing gratitude, for example.
Gratitude. We touched on this a bit before. So how does gratitude fit into all this?
It's huge EE. When you focus on what you're grateful for, it shifts your focus away from the negative.
So it's like a mental reset button.
Kind of. It's about appreciating the good, even the small stuff.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Like make gratitude a regular thing?
One simple thing, gratitude journaling. Every day, maybe right when you wake up or before bed, write down a few things you're thankful for. Could be anything.
Like my morning coffee counts.
Totally. And don't just list them. Try to really feel that gratitude.
Savor the moment.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, research shows gratitude can actually reduce stress, help you sleep better, even boost your immune system.
Whoa, so it's not just about feeling good, it's actually good for you.
Right. It's like a happiness superpower.
Yeah.
But I know what you're thinking. What about those days when it feels like there's nothing to be grateful for?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, what do you do when life is just throwing punches?
That's when gratitude is even more important. It's about finding those tiny glimmers of light, even when it's tough.
So even just having a roof over your head, food on the table, those basic things.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective, even if it's just a little bit.
Okay, I'm getting this. So we've had the experience, enriched it with gratitude. What's absorb all about?
Absorb is about taking those good vibes and really letting them sink in, making them part of you.
So not just noticing them, but like internalizing them.
Yes. It's about rewiring your brain for happiness, literally strengthening those neural pathways. And then comes the link part.
Link. This is where we connect the good stuff to the bad stuff. Right?
Exactly. This is where it gets powerful. You take that positive experience you've cultivated and use it to face challenges.
So it's like building a mental muscle.
Yes. When something tough happens, you can consciously bring back that feeling of joy or gratitude and use it to navigate the situation.
Wow, I love that. It's like we're creating a happiness arsenal.
Right. And you know, another powerful tool in that arsenal is mindfulness.
Mindfulness. I feel like everyone's talking about mindfulness these days, but honestly, I'm not sure I totally get it.
Yeah, it gets thrown around a lot. It's not about emptying your mind or anything like that. It's about paying attention to what's happening right now without judgment.
So like just noticing your thoughts and feelings, but not getting swept away by them.
Exactly. It's about creating a little space between you and your reactions.
Okay, that makes sense. But my mind is like constantly racing. How do you actually DO mindfulness?
It takes practice. One simple thing is focusing on your breath. Just notice the inhales, the exhales. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back.
So it's like training a puppy.
Kind of. And you can do it anywhere, anytime. Walking, eating, even washing the dishes.
Okay, so being present in the moment. But how does that actually make you happier?
Well, when you're not mindful, your mind tends to dwell on the past or worry about the future. That creates a lot of unnecessary suffering.
The mental time travel trap.
Exactly. But when you're mindful, you're more grounded in the NRW. You can appreciate the simple things, savor the experience.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like hitting the pause button on all that mental chatter and just being. So mindfulness is about absorbing, but what about when we're feeling down on ourselves? Like when that inner critic takes over?
That's where self-compassion comes in. Treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend.
Oh, so being your own best friend.
Exactly. Acknowledging your imperfections without all that judgment. It's a game changer, I promise.
Okay, sign me up. But my inner critic can be pretty brutal. How do you actually quiet that voice?
It's a practice, like anything else. Start by noticing when that voice is active, what it's saying. Then try to respond with kindness.
So instead of I'm such a failure, it's more like, hey, everyone makes mistakes, it's okay.
Exactly. You're learning, you're growing, you're human.
Okay, that's way more supportive. It feels like we're rewiring our brains for kindness, not just towards others, but to ourselves too. But what about when it's other people bringing us down? Like, what if it's a relationship that's draining our energy?
That's where boundaries become super important. It's about protecting your energy, being clear about what you will and won't tolerate.
Setting limits and communicating them.
Right. It's not about being selfish. It's about honoring your needs. Then you can show up for yourself and for others in a healthier way.
This is so helpful. It's like we're building a mental toolkit for happiness, but there's one piece we haven't talked much about yet. Purpose, like what's it all FOR?
Ah, the big why. And you're right. Having a sense of purpose is a huge part of happiness. It gives you direction, motivation, connects you to something bigger than yourself.
So how do you find that purpose? It sounds kind of intimidating.
It's a journey. Start by asking yourself, what are you passionate about? What are your unique gifts? How can you use them to make a difference?
Wow, deep questions. Like, what's my mission in life?
Exactly. And it might not be some big epiphany. It could unfold over time. The key is to be open, explore, and trust the process.
This is making me want to sit down with a journal and really reflect. But honestly, between work, family, life in general, how do we even make time for all this happiness stuff?
That's where self-care comes in. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's not a luxury. It's essential.
Self-care, I always feel guilty about that. Like, am I being selfish?
Not at all. When you take care of yourself, you have more energy to give to others. It's about filling your own cup so you can pour into others.
Okay, I like that analogy. But what does self-care actually look like? Bubble baths and massages.
It can be, but also simple things. Getting enough sleep, eating healthy, spending time in nature, doing something you enjoy. Find what nourishes you.
So it's really personalized.
Yes, and small steps add up. Swap 5 minutes of scrolling on your phone for 5 minutes of gratitude practice. Take a walk in your lunch break. Little things make a big difference.
This is so inspiring. It's like we're rewiring our lives for happiness one small step at a time. But what about when those negative thoughts just won't go away? Like those deep down beliefs that hold us back?
Ah, you're talking about limiting beliefs. Those negative thoughts that we often accept as truth. They can be sneaky little things.
Limiting beliefs. Can you give an example?
Sure, like I'm not good enough or I'll never be successful. They're often rooted in past experiences or messages we've internalized.
So it's like these mental blocks we put up for ourselves without even realizing it.
Exactly. But the good news is we can challenge them. Start by becoming aware of those thoughts. Then ask yourself, is this really true?
So questioning the story we're telling ourselves.
Right. And then try to reframe those negative thoughts into something more empowering.
So instead of I'm not good enough, it's I'm learning and growing.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective and creating new, more supportive beliefs. And if you're struggling with this, don't hesitate to reach out for support. A therapist, a coach, they can be great allies in this process.
This is all so empowering. It's like we're taking back control of our minds and our happiness. But we talked earlier about how happiness can be contagious. So how do we create a positive social environment that actually supports our well-being?
That's a fantastic question. It starts with being mindful of the energy you bring to your interactions. Are you radiating positivity? Are you being supportive?
So being the change we want to see.
Exactly. And also being mindful of who you surround yourself with. Choose people who lift you up, who inspire you.
Like build a happiness dream team.
Right. And it's not about judging others. It's about protecting your own energy.
I get it. You're not responsible for fixing everyone else, but you are responsible for taking care of yourself. But what about those relationships you can't just walk away from, like difficult family members or maybe a toxic work environment?
That's when you got to set boundaries. Communicate what you will and won't tolerate in a respectful way.
So learning to say no.
Yes, it's about protecting your well-being, saying yes to the things that light you up.
This is all making so much sense. It's like we're building a happiness fortress with gratitude and self-compassion as the foundation.
I like that. And don't forget about meaning and purpose. That's a huge part of the fortress, too. It's about finding your why.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We haven't talked about that in a while. So how do we find that? Is it like written on a scroll somewhere?
No. It's an inner journey. What are you passionate about? What are your unique gifts? What kind of impact do you want to make on the world?
Deep stuff. It's like figuring out your mission in life.
Exactly. And it might not be a sudden realization. It could be something that unfolds gradually. Be patient, explore, and trust the process.
I love that. So we've got gratitude, self-compassion, purpose, and of course, self-care. Seriously, how do we fit it all in?
It's about small, consistent steps.
Hmm.
Swap 5 minutes of scrolling on your phone for 5 minutes of mindfulness, take a walk on your lunch break. Little things add up.
Okay, so it's doable, but what about when those negative thoughts are just like super stubborn, those deep down beliefs that hold you back?
Ah, you're talking about limiting beliefs. Those can be tricky.
Limiting beliefs, yeah, what are those again?
They're those negative thoughts that we often accept as truth, even if they're not. Like, I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed.
Oh, yeah, I know those voices all too well.
They can be sneaky. But once you become aware of them, you can start to challenge them. Ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence do I have?
So, like fact checking our own thoughts.
Exactly. And then try to reframe them into something more positive and empowering.
So instead of I'm a failure, it's I'm learning and growing.
Perfect. It's about creating new, more supportive beliefs. And don't be afraid to seek support from a therapist or coach. They can be amazing guides on this journey.
This is all so eye-opening. It's like we're learning to be our own happiness coaches. But earlier we talked about how happiness can be contagious. So how do we surround ourselves with people who support our well-being?
That's a great question. It starts with you. Be the kind of person you want to attract. Radiate positivity, be supportive, be a good friend.
So leading by example.
Exactly. And then be mindful of who you spend your time with. Choose people who lift you up, who inspire you, who share your values.
Like building your own happiness squad.
Exactly. And it's not about judging others. It's about being intentional with your energy.
I get it. You're not responsible for fixing everyone else's problems.
Right. But you are responsible for protecting your own well-being.
Right.
And that includes setting boundaries, especially in those relationships that are draining.
Ah, boundaries. We talked about that earlier. So learning to say no even to people we care about.
Yes. It's about honoring your needs so you can show up as your best self.
This is so empowering. It's like we're building a happiness fortress with gratitude and self-compassion as the foundation, a happiness squad cheering us on, and strong boundaries to protect us from those energy vampires.
Love that analogy. And let's not forget about that sense of purpose, that driving force that gives our lives meaning. That's a crucial part of the fortress, too.
Oh, right. Finding our why. How do we even begin to do that?
It's an inner journey. Ask yourself, what are you passionate about? What are your unique gifts? How can you use those gifts to make a difference in the world?
Wow, those are some big questions. It's like figuring out our mission in life.
Exactly. And it might not be a sudden epiphany. It could unfold over time. Be patient, explore, trust the process.
Okay, so it's about being open to the journey. But honestly, between work, family, life in general, how do we even find the time for all this happiness stuff? It's like we need an extra day in the week just for self-care.
That's where it becomes about small, consistent actions.
Yeah.
Swap 5 minutes of scrolling on your phone for 5 minutes of gratitude practice. Take a walk on your lunch break instead of eating at your desk. Little things make a big difference over time.
So it's doable. But what about when those pesky negative thoughts just won't go away? You know, those deep down beliefs that we're not good enough or we'll never succeed.
Ah, yes, those limiting beliefs. They can be sneaky and stubborn.
Limiting beliefs. Remind me what those are again.
They're those negative thoughts that we often accept as truth, even when they're not. Like, I'm a failure, or I'm not worthy of love.
Ugh, yes, I know those voices all too well.
We all have them to some degree. But the key is to become aware of them and then challenge them. Ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence do I have to support this belief?
So it's like we're putting those negative thoughts on trial.
Exactly. And often, when we really examine them, we realize they're based on old stories, past experiences, or messages we've internalized that may no longer be true.
Okay, that's empowering. So we're taking back control of our thoughts.
Right. And once you've identified those limiting beliefs, you can start to reframe them into something more positive and empowering.
So instead of I'm not good enough, it becomes I'm learning and growing. I'm worthy of love.
Perfect.
Perfect.
It's about shifting your perspective and creating new, more supportive beliefs. And remember, if you're struggling with this, there's no shame in seeking support from a therapist or coach. They can be incredible guides on this journey.
This is all so insightful. It's like we're learning to be our own happiness coaches, building our own happiness fortresses, and rewriting the stories we tell ourselves.
I love that. And it's a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, challenges, and setbacks. But the key is to keep practicing, keep learning, and keep growing.
Okay, so it's an ongoing process. But what about when those negative thoughts just won't go away? You know, those deep down beliefs that we're not good enough or we'll never succeed.
Ah, yes, those limiting beliefs. They can be sneaky and stubborn.
Limiting beliefs, remind me what those are again.
They're those negative thoughts that we often accept as truth, even when they're not, like I'm a failure or I'm not worthy of love.
Ugh, yes, I know those voices all too well.
We all have them to some degree, but the key is to become aware of them and then challenge them. Ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence do I have to support this belief?
So it's like we're putting those negative thoughts on trial.
Exactly. And often, when we really examine them, we realize they're based on old stories, past experiences, or messages we've internalized that may no longer be true.
Okay, that's empowering. So we're taking back control of our thoughts.
Right. And once you've identified those limiting beliefs, you can start to reframe them into something more positive and empowering.
So instead of I'm not good enough, it becomes I'm learning and growing. I'm worthy of love.
Perfect. It's about shifting your perspective and creating new, more supportive beliefs. And remember, if you're struggling with this, there's no shame in seeking support from a therapist or coach. They can be incredible guides on this journey.
This is all so insightful. It's like we're learning to be our own happiness coaches, building our own happiness fortresses, and rewriting the stories we tell ourselves.
I love that. And it's a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, challenges, and setbacks. But the key is to keep practicing, keep learning, and keep growing.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. We've covered so much ground. Gratitude, self-compassion, purpose, flow, boundaries, limiting beliefs, and so much more. It's like we've created a whole happiness toolkit. But before we wrap things up, I want to touch on one more question that's come up a lot. The connection between happiness and success.
Ah, yes, the age-old question. Can we have both?
Exactly. Is it one or the other? Or can we actually achieve both happiness and success?
That's a great question, and the answer is more nuanced than a simple yes or no.
I was hoping you'd say that. So it's not an either situation.
Not at all. While conventional wisdom might suggest that we have to choose between happiness and success, research shows that they're not mutually exclusive. In fact, they often complement and enhance each other.
So it's possible to have our cake and eat it too.
In a way, yes.
Hmm.
When we're happy, we tend to be more productive, more creative, more resilient, and better able to handle stress. These qualities can definitely contribute to greater success in all areas of life.
So happiness isn't just about feeling good. It can actually fuel our success.
Precisely. But it's important to remember that success, as it's traditionally defined, doesn't automatically equal happiness. If we chase success solely for external validation, we might find ourselves on a never-ending treadmill, always striving for more, but never truly feeling fulfilled.
So it's about finding success on our own terms based on what truly matters to us.
Exactly. It's about aligning our goals with our values, pursuing things that bring us genuine joy and fulfillment, and recognizing that true success encompasses not just external achievements, but also our well-being, our relationships, and our contributions to the world.
I love that definition of success. It's so much more holistic and meaningful. But let's be real, life isn't always sunshine and rainbows. How do we stay resilient and keep striving for our goals, even when things get tough?
That's where resilience comes in. Resilience is that ability to bounce back from setbacks, to adapt to change, and to maintain a sense of well-being, even in the face of adversity.
So it's like our inner strength that helps us weather the storms.
Exactly. And the great thing is that resilience is a skill we can develop. It's not something we're born with. It's something we cultivate through practice and intention.
Okay, so how do we build that resilience muscle?
There are several key things we can do. One is to cultivate a growth mindset, which means seeing challenges as opportunities for learning and growth rather than failures. Another is to build strong social connections, to surround ourselves with people who support and uplift us. And of course, taking care of our physical and mental health is crucial. Getting enough sleep, eating nourishing foods, exercising regularly, and engaging in activities we enjoy all contribute to greater resilience.
So it's about creating a strong foundation for ourselves, both physically and mentally.
Exactly. Resilience isn't about being invincible or avoiding challenges altogether. It's about developing the inner strength and resources to navigate adversity with grace and emerge from it stronger and more resourceful.
I love that. It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves, both in the good times and the challenging times. And speaking of challenges, we've got a mailbag full of listener questions that we're going to tackle after the break. Stay tuned. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the science of happiness. We've covered a lot of ground, but now it's time to turn things over to you, our amazing listeners. We had a ton of great questions, so let's dive right into the mailbag, shall we?
I'm ready.
Okay, this first one comes from Sarah, and she asks, I keep hearing that happiness is mostly determined by our genes. So if that's true, am I just stuck with my current level of happiness? Or can I actually change it? What do you think?
That's a super common question, Sarah, and it's great that you're asking it. Here's the thing. Genes, DO play a role, but they don't tell the whole story. Research actually suggests that only about 50% of our happiness level is due to genetics.
50%, so that means the other half.
It's totally up for grabs. It's influenced by our circumstances, sure, but also, crucially, by our choices and actions.
So it's like we're not just prisoners of our DNA.
Nope. We have way more power than we think to shape our own happiness.
That's so good to hear. So even if someone's genes might make them a little less naturally inclined to happiness, they can still make changes.
Absolutely. All those things we've been talking about, gratitude, kindness, mindfulness, self-compassion, they're like tools to rewire your brain for more happiness, no matter what your genes say.
I love that. Okay, next question comes from John. He says, I work really hard to be successful in my career, but I never feel truly happy. Is something wrong with me? Oof. John, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
For sure. And John, your question really highlights a common myth, that success equals happiness.
Yeah, we're kind of conditioned to believe that, aren't we? Like, if we just achieve X, then we'll be happy.
Right, and while accomplishing goals does feel good, it's not a guaranteed path to lasting happiness.
So what's the key then?
I think it comes down to how you define success. If it's all about external achievements, you might always be chasing the next thing, never really feeling content.
The hedonic treadmill we talked about earlier.
Exactly. So it's about finding success that aligns with your values, things that bring you genuine fulfillment, not just accolades or money.
Okay, so success that feels authentic to you. I like that. All right, we've got time for one more question. This one's from Maria, and she asks, with so much negativity in the world, it's hard to feel happy. How do we stay positive when surrounded by so much suffering?
Maria, that's such an important question. And it's honest, right? We can't just ignore the pain that exists.
Right, like toxic positivity isn't the answer.
Nope. It's important to acknowledge those feelings of sadness, anger, even despair. But here's the thing. We always have a choice in how we respond.
So we can let the negativity consume us, or
we can choose to focus on the good, however small it might seem. Spread kindness, even if it's just a smile to a stranger. Get involved in causes you care about. You have the power to make a difference.
Wow, that's really inspiring. It's like, yeah, the world's a messy place, but we don't have to be passive about it. We can still choose hope. We can still choose to act.
Exactly. Even small actions can ripple outwards and create positive change.
This has been such an amazing conversation. Honestly, I feel like I've learned so much, and I hope our listeners have too.
Me too. It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
You know, when we started this deep dive, I was really looking for some solid answers about happiness. And what I've realized is that it's not about finding a one-size-fits-all solution, but more like building a toolkit.
I love that analogy, a happiness toolkit. We've got gratitude, self-compassion, mindfulness, setting boundaries, finding our purpose, taking care of ourselves, and the list goes on.
And the best part is we can start using these tools today. Even small changes can make a big difference over time.
Absolutely. Remember, happiness is a journey, not a destination. There will be bumps along the way, but the key is to keep learning, keep growing, and keep practicing those happiness habits.
This has been The Deep Dive, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another fascinating exploration. Until then, keep those happiness toolkits handy, and remember, you have the power to create a life that feels good on the inside and makes a positive impact on the world around you.
Well said.